My name is James Arthur White Sr., and I always say senior because I have a son in California whose name is also James Arthur White. And I have a company called Performance Consulting Services, and we have been in Columbus now for 33 years. Myself and my daughter has been with me for about 25 years. And what we want to do is to assist individuals, groups, and organizations in identifying development tools that allows them to empower themselves in their pursuit of performance excellence. And so we're just here. We just appreciate the opportunity for young Dr. Smith to bring us in and to share this information. And my contact information is jwhite2 at columbus.rr.com. WHITE, the number 2 at columbus.rr.com.
Yes, my name is Richard Lundy, and I'm the founder of the Father and Son Celebration. I'm an educator by profession. I'm currently working with young males 13 to 17 on self-mastery. It's a course that I put together. In that we will deal with issues like conflict resolution, values clarification, self-esteem. One of my favorite courses is to teach young guys about the male ego. I've done some things. Last 2 years, I did it out at the co-ed building on Main Street. And before that, I was out at Whitehall Yearling High School, Reynoldsburg High, and Pickaway Correctional Facilities. I was out there for about 3 years.
Working.
And I'm a writer. I have a book published. It's entitled The Father-Son Connection: From Abandonment to Reconciliation. I've got another book that I'm getting ready to get Jim to send through AI on why should mothers get a free pass.
Woo!
And my contact information again is the Kemetic Institute, KMT, it's an abbreviation, institute at hotmail.com.
Okay, I just got excited sitting over there listening to you guys talk. Now I thought I knew everything about Richard. Richard gave me some other stuff, boy. He gave me some other little twists and turns that he didn't tell about the back alley, the sideways, all these things. Really, it was really interesting, very, very interesting. And when you started talking about the book, that's one of the things that I really wanted to get to because I kind of know the history of how they started working on the book. We spent almost half a year.
About a year.
Yeah, going meeting. They met every Wednesday. We did flip charts and everything, and they put this book. This book is dynamite, man. It is absolutely one of the most powerful things that I've seen between a father and a son. And the thing that I would like for Richard to talk about is you wrote letters, right?
Mm-hmm.
But your son wrote letters.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in the book, you both have your letters.
Mm-hmm.
So talk about that, Rich.
Mm-hmm. When I save, I'm a kind of a saver, hoarder guy, and I wanted to make sure that whenever I came face to face with my offspring, that they couldn't say I never reached out. And so I said, I'm saving my letters.
Mm-hmm.
And I would send him letters on legal pad, 3 pages, and I would send him letters. And I would talk to him about where I was at the same age he was at that time. I would talk to him about that. And I would talk to him about the importance of the values that I had mentioned, alluded to earlier, family, African history, work for yourself, spirit, have some relationship with a higher power. Those were the things that I drilled into him, work for yourself, And so when I came back, I was talking to him one day. I was over his house and he talked to me and he showed me one of the letters he wrote when he was about 10 years old.
Right.
And I told him I had that, and he said, you kept the letters? I said, yeah, I kept the letters. He said, I kept some too. So we had about 14 letters.
Right.
We had about 14 letters. And like I said, they're good letters. And I mean, it was humorous for me to get the letters from him, to hear him he's trying to impress me, and I know, and little boys, I had 13 nephews, so I've seen that. And he was telling me about what he was doing playing football, and he was a star athlete, and I told him, I said, you still got to learn the fundamentals, brother. You still got to learn that. And so he took the advantage of being a famous athlete on the campus and stuff, and so he didn't study and get a lot of this stuff. So he ended up, when he graduated, he had to go back to school to take math because he was in investments. He saw immediately he wasn't going to be
But before you
competitive.
get into that, because I mean that's heavy, I still want to deal with the letters, man. Because what happened when, with me, you, Ella, your son, you guys realized that you had those letters and he was 10,
Mm.
12, writing a letter. What made him, because most boys ain't gonna write no letter,
Well, his
man.
mother.
Okay, yeah,
His
that's what I
mother,
need to
his
hear.
mother,
Okay,
his mother. We had a good relationship,
that's the case.
and the mother never badmouthed me, and never.
Yes,
That's why out of all of my kids,
yes,
I don't have problems. There's many problems with him as I do with some of the other ones because when the mothers berate the man, I don't care if he's not good. You don't want to do that in the presence of your kid. Let the kid find out for himself. If he's not any good, the kid's gonna find out, and
right,
just like
right.
that, you know. And so. She was that way. She said, "I don't care that you're gonna write him. She'd make him read mine because he wouldn't. He wouldn't even. For a long time, I knew that a lot of young guys they wouldn't even read the
Right.
letters. And then when I started sending him books, I knew he wasn't gonna read those books. I knew that he wasn't gonna read those books, and I still kept sending them. I sent him when I'd come home. He would show. He'd have them all lined up on his on a book rack in his bedroom, and none of them had been touched.
Yeah,
And he said one day he finally pulled one off there and he said, "Whoa,
yeah,
this
yeah.
kind of stuff is in there." So then he started reading them, and that got him. And so that broke down some of the stuff. The letters. Now, when he
Right,
goes back and reviews the letters, he sees that I was parenting.
right.
See what I'm saying? So he can't say you didn't do nothing. Like now he's told his mother, which made me feel good. He said, "Mom, you raised me for the first 20, 25 years." He said, "But since I've been with my dad, I learned so much, it's just unbelievable." So not to knock what you're saying and what you did, because you did a great job, but all the stuff that I was missing. And so to me, that's why when I did work down at the prisons, I forgot to mention that. I did
Yeah.
3 years down at
Before you go there, I'm still on the book, baby. I'm still on the book,
you got to
man.
ask me what you
There's
want me.
another component in the book that I think is powerful that women should read the book. Mothers should get this book because, as you said, his mother never put him down. So, throughout the book, one of the things that people get from the book is you still maintain that relationship with mother, father,
Yes.
and son.
Yeah. Yeah. We still have a great relationship. We still have a great relationship.
Yeah, and it's throughout the book.
Yeah.
And what you see throughout the book, you wrote a letter, and in the book, their letters are in the book, man.
Hmm.
That's the piece that's the piece that I get excited about. You having your letters in the book, you wrote him, and then what?
You respond.
He responded.
Hmm.
What was that interaction like? What did that do for you when you saw that your son had what, 13 letters? I mean, how many young kids between the ages of 10 and 40
Hmm.
have written 13 letters to their parents? So how did that hit you?
Well, like I said, I was it felt good every time I got a letter from him because, like I said, I knew what it was like being a little boy and wanting to impress your father.
Right.
And that's what I saw him, and I saw that even though he was trying to be hard,
Right,
he
right,
wasn't
right.
giving, that kind of stuff. But he still, I could tell that he enjoyed that. And when I would tell him about my experiences, like graduating from high school and my father not coming to the graduation, so he could get a little insight, like, well, he didn't have it so great, that kind of stuff. And so that's where I talked about in the letters. I would
Yeah,
share those kind and big disappointments. I told him about when I got fired on the job.
yeah.
I told him what
That
it
was
felt like.
powerful, though.
I told him what it felt like. I said, I want you to know what it feels like when you get fired. I said, if you get fired and we're connected. I said, and I got the money. If you get fired on a job, I'm gonna take you on vacation because it ain't no big deal. There's another job for you.
But you also mentioned that there was like 3 or 4 guys, older guys,
Mentors, my
that your
mentors.
mentors, and they talked about if you're going to reconnect with your son,
Hmm.
who you haven't been a part of for 18 years,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
What did they tell you had to do, and how'd you do it?
They told me some of the things that they told me. All three of them told me they didn't even know each other, but they pretty much told me the same things. They told me that you had to first tell them you love them. You got to tell them that you like every time you write them, every time you talk to them, tell them. They got to hear that from you. The other thing you have to do is you have to be consistent. You can't be off and on, have, whatever. And you have to be a man of your word with them because they've been disappointed a lot. And so you have to be a man of your word to deal with them on that. If you're going to say you coming to visit them or you want them to come and visit you, you got to make it happen. You can't do any, come up with no shaky stuff. They talked to me about having a relationship, trying to have a relationship with the mother, trying to have, even if it's bad, you got to do your best to try to deal with that. And an aside story on that was my daughter, I had a hard time with her mother. It was very difficult. But because I had been mentored by these guys and that my daughter was the youngest child, I had some experience. And so I knew that what I had to do was forgive her mother and not carry that bitterness that I had toward her mother because of the things that I had gone through with her. And so one day I was at a flea market in Berkeley and I saw this sign that said, the best thing a man, a little sign on wood, said, the best thing a man can do for his mother, his daughter, is to love her mother. And I bought it. And I bought it. And I put it on my dresser. I said, I'm going to have to look at that every day, to get rid of that, I had a hard time getting past that one, but that I had to do it. I had to do that because that's what you put out, you get back.
Right. And a critical piece that you said, and I've seen you do this because we've been out, talking to people on different kind of presentations. You said that they told you you had to be open to any kind of question that they
any
asked
kind of
you.
treatment.
Right. So I mean, because that was the problem. What was that? What was that purpose?
Yeah, they said, you're the one that walked away.
Woo.
Those, they didn't ask to be here. There's their little babies. You made the decision to walk out of their lives. So how can you come back and think that they're going to be just happy to see you and hunky-dory and whatever? So when I came back to Columbus, I had to look for my second son. I mean, he was off the map as far as I didn't know where he lived or anything, so I had to look for him. And when I found him, he was in a drug house. And I went in and all the cats was in there. They had the dogs and the guns and the drugs. I said, oh, Lord, they coming in and raid this place. Now I'm going to jail, And so I went in and I asked, I said, is Chris in here? He said, who is Chris? That wasn't what his name was.
Oh, he had another.
He's 300 pounds. So they called him Bear.
Bear, really?
So he said, oh, he talking about Bear. So he came out of there, big 300-pound guy, big deep voice. I'm like, God.
Yeah, he got a voice. He got a voice, too.
I'm like, how could this guy be my son,
Yeah.
And of course, he wanted to be tough, he wanted to be hard, yeah. So I told him, I said, hey, I'm just letting you know that I'm back in Columbus. I'm going to be living here. And I just want you to know I'm here. And to me, the most I would hope for is that we can possibly develop a friendship. I said, I'm not coming back here trying to be your daddy, telling you what to do or whatever. So I told both of my sons that was why I wasn't coming back here. I was just hoping we could be friends.
And you were open. The key piece of I'm thinking, I watched them ask you some questions.
Yeah.
That most people would have told them, go to hell. I'm not going to answer that damn question. But what did you do?
Hey, I felt compelled to give him a honest answer. Again, because I walked away. Even though I was ignorant, I did it.
Yeah.
And so to me, what can I say? What can I say? There's nothing that you can say. I can't say that your mother made me do it. I was mad at you. I can't say none of that. I never talked about none of my children's mother.
Yes, that was
Never.
Thing.
I knew not to do that.
You always showed respect, and one of the things that you would always say, Rich, whenever we're doing the interviews, you'd say, talk about the moms. Mom did what? Everything she could do.
Yep. The mothers did what they could do. They did the best that they could do given the circumstances and situation they found themselves in. And I'd say out of 3 children, my oldest son's mother did the best job. The other 2 is kind of nip and tuck because those mothers kind of put me down a lot. and it's very emotional. And I'm glad I came to my senses,
Right.
because that would have been the death knell for me.
For you and your daughter seeing
Yeah,
that.
my daughter seeing that, I never.
But the powerful thing, Rich, that I think women need to read the book along with fathers and sons
Right.
because it sends a powerful message
Right.
that what both mother and
And
father,
father does.
whatever that is,
Right.
they need to be able
Right.
to deal with. So it's really powerful.
Because I'm sensitive to the fact that, I had 4 sisters and I watched them deal with those nephews. And I saw how they boys manipulate mothers. And I saw why it was important to have a father present, because men deal with boys and girls differently. And both children need their father. The girls need a father just as bad as the boys need a father. The father gives them the role model for men that they should be attracted to. And a lot of guys just don't, I don't want to deal with the girls, You got to deal with the girls too. Like my daughter, she was so shy and sensitive that when I raised my voice, she would cry. And so that she taught me, you better lower your voice, buddy, because I go home and tell my mom, you won't get to see me no more.
Wow.
See, she knew that. She knew she had that kind of clout. So I had to, okay, Valerie.
Wow.
So that's the same with little boys. How many times have you seen a boy that doesn't belong to you dating a woman, and you come in and try to befriend him? He ain't going to befriend you because intuitively, instinctively, he knows what you're there for. You ain't there for him. He knows that. You trying to sidle up to him to get to his mom. And so he's not going to give you any play. He's going to bleed you if he can. He's going to ask you for money. If you give him money and stuff, he'll take all that you can give him. But he still ain't going to give you the respect because as a little boy, we know.
I just think that the book is probably one of the best things that has hit the market in the last 2 years, especially about a father and son. And tell them about your front cover and the back cover, which is so powerful, man.
The front cover is him and I embracing. Face to face, we're both looking at the camera, photograph thing. We're face to face embracing, smiling,
That's right.
smiling. And then on the back, we're walking across like a little bridge, and you're seeing us from behind. It's just both of us just walking together.
Franklin Park. Yeah. And I'm not trying to be an ad, but I would say that if anyone listening to this, I think you owe it to yourself to get it. And if you personally don't need it, you have an uncle, a brother, a cousin, a next door neighbor, somebody that's in the male, that is a male, needs this book. And also the mothers need it. So I think it's a piece that can really start to bring people together. Which gets me to the whole thing of the father and son. When you think about you writing about fathers and sons, what was it? Why do you think fathers and sons needed to get together? Because you said the father needs the son and the son needs the father. What was that piece that?
Well, again, like a lot of my buddies, their fathers weren't there. My father was there, but he wasn't there for me. My father never took me out to throw the football. He never taught me how to ride a bike. He never told me about girls. He was, like I said, he was just there. He was a disciplinarian. That was his role. If you get out of line, mom says you got out of line, I'm going to tighten you up. That was kind of his role. So to me, I was always wanting to be validated by my father. And so I looked at my nephews and I saw them, and that's where I got this idea that I was going to be their savior, which I shouldn't have done because they were almost as young as my youngest nephew is 6 years younger than me. And so I had one every year after that. So, it was like the stair steps. And so they were more like brothers, but I'm sitting around trying to boss them, do this, do that, and they're like, you know. So that was a part of it. But the important part for me in terms of the mothers reading the book is they also will have an opportunity to see how men think. Because how could she see? She couldn't understand how he would the exchange between he and I when he was telling me in a boastful way about what he was doing. She doesn't get that. He comes in there telling in a way that's just, oh yeah, I did that, whatever. But she can see that. She can see. She can see the importance of those values that I told him about. again, that you're not going to find that in any book. I don't think with fathers and sons about where somebody was passing down the values. They might do it, but you didn't see where they talked about doing it.
Write it down.
And so that was another piece. And again, because I had 4 sisters and I saw them get crushed all the time having those babies out of wedlock, I'm very sensitive to women and I don't want to see them hurt. And that's why I work with these boys. Now, I used to do workshops when I lived in California. I did a lot more. I only did maybe about 4 when I came back to Columbus. But I used to tell women, when you spoil them, you're creating a woman beater. Because he's going to look for the woman to do everything his mother did. And when you don't do it, you ain't better than my mother. So you can't do that. Even I had one female, she had grandson. And she had a son, and I kind of tried to mentor her on that, but she wouldn't listen to anything I said. So he was a mess. So now she has a grandson, and I'm telling her again, and she said, I don't care what you say, Richard, I'm going to spoil him to death. See what I'm saying? So that's a hard nut for women to deal with, that tough love. They got to know about tough love. There's a certain way, yeah, you can help them, but they got to be a point where they got to help themselves. And women very rarely know when that point is,
And I can't think of anything else that's more important to Black families. And I really think, because I'm not trying to leave white families out,
Right.
because they're going through the same identical thing.
Right.
But right now, I'm talking about my own heart.
Right.
Charity begins at home and spreads abroad.
Right.
So what I want to do is talk about African American and Black and Haitian, like yourself, right? Because we're all in that same kind of era.
Right.
But I personally can't think of anything more important for us right now.
Right.
If we can bring fathers and sons together, that creates family.
That's right. That creates family. Again, look at what it does for our women. They're going to feel good when they see us bridging that. When Darren and I, the one time we spoke at out in Phoenix, we went to a presentation out in Phoenix, and it was multicultural. Because you're in Phoenix, Arizona, you had a whole lot of Hispanics, you had a whole lot of Asians, you had Middle Easterners, you had Caucasians, and you had a few Blacks. When we finished speaking, those people rushed to us. They rushed to us because they had so many questions they want to ask. Then we did one down in Columbus State, and they had a bunch of people there. It was about 30 people there. And I remember this Asian guy, the students was all around Darren and I asking us questions and all that. And he stood off to the side and waited. He waited till all those students left, and he came over and he told me, he says, this is the same problem we had. He said, I appreciate you took a lot of courage for you to do that. So I know this is gold. I know this is gold, and we're ready to share this with the world, share it with other people, because if, just like Jim said, if we can get these guys together, now we can start talking about having intergenerational conversations.
Yeah.
Because we got to have that too. We got to have that too, because there's a lot of young kids that come out and went to college, got degrees, really super intelligent, but they don't have the wisdom and the experience. And that's as valuable as all them degrees that they got. So we have to find a way to bridge that. I've said in my book that the father and son is the cornerstone of the family.
That's it. It is. And you just mentioned the word courage. I think when I watch both of them talking, what I'm starting, and I see with Darren, it's coming up more and more and more. I see the courage in both of them, because not only do they talk to each other, but after they talk to each other, then people in the audience ask them questions and how they support each other, but they tell the truth. And I think that's one of the pieces that really comes through. So what says, and again, not another commercial, but the two of them will go out to a church. They'll go out to a family group. They'll go out to whatever it is library, and they will sit down and talk and have that conversation. I've gone with them on a couple of them where we do interviews, but whether they're doing the interview or whether they're talking between themselves, the reason why we do the interview, they don't have to say everything. I can ask questions that other people may not ask that I know other folks are looking for. But regardless to how it happens, what is good, we need to have father and son conversations. We need to have them all over Columbus, all over Ohio. Everyone needs these things. We need to bridge that gap because we understand why as African American people, we are in a situation where 70% of our children who are born into families without a male. We know what created that. We didn't create that ourselves. You go back and look at our history, but we need to break that. And that's the only way that we're going to do the kind of things that we need to do for us to be healthy as a population of people.
Absolutely.
And Rich and Darren, they have it. It's there. And again, that book, the thing that really gets me again would be the letters. He would write a letter, his son would write a letter. He'd write a and they kept. What would make you think that you would keep those letters and that he would keep the letters? I mean, for years they kept those letters. So that's
we were old.
yeah. Also, when he came down to visit you, what happened? Remember?
When he was 25, he called me and he said, "Dad, I'm thinking about coming out visiting you." I said, "Yeah, welcome. I'm certainly happy to have you come." He said, "And I'm gonna pay my own way." I was glad about that, but I knew he would do that because that was my son, and I knew he would. He gonna be. I'm gonna show him. So he paid his way. He came out there. We stayed. He stayed for 2 weeks. We stayed up all night talking. We were talking, and he said he came into my bedroom and he looked around my bedroom and he saw how I had all them books by my bed because I'm a reader, and he saw all the books. He said, "Dang, I do the same thing." We were sitting down talking one night till about midnight, and I said, "I'm gonna get me some Raisin Bran, man." He said, "Damn, I ain't Raisin Bran at night," And so we found out about the things that we had in common that we didn't foster in the one-on-one contact. Right. And so this is one of the things that I try to share with people. That's your child is a replication of you.
Yes.
Okay, you don't see a lot of it when they're real young, but when they get to be adults, you see it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you got to ride the herd. You got to ride the hurricane out down there when they're young and know everything and sassy and that kind of stuff because you were in them.
Yeah.
And so that was what intuitively I knew that my son was like me, because I remember when he was born and I remember holding him, and stuff, I'm like, wow, this is me.
Okay, you just hit on something. So you held your son, saw him, and you even told the mom that you was going to do the right thing. What happened? Why did you decide to not stay in Columbus, Ohio, brother?
Well, when I got out of the service, when I went to California, I didn't ever want to come back to Columbus.
No, I mean before that. Remember, you were 18. You met with the mom, and you had the baby, and she said, "Are you going to do the right thing?" Or maybe it was even before he was born. You said yes.
What I meant was I was going to pay.
Okay.
That's what I meant. I was going to pay child support because, like I said, my sisters, the guys didn't pay child support. So I thought if I did that, that would be okay.
But here's another thing. You probably forgot this. Okay. You said she called you and told you what?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh no, that's major. I mean, but I wasn't going to do it anyway because I knew that I had to do that. Sure, what her mother did was call when I went up to talk to him. I went to talk to her parents. I didn't even tell my parents because I didn't want to face my mother because I was embarrassed because I promised her I'd never do that. And I didn't want to deal with my father because I didn't know if he would physically assault me, because I saw him beat my sister.
Right.
Okay, so I said, no, I can't face that. But so I had the courtesy to go tell her parents, and I sat down with both of them, and I got along well with her father. Her mother was kind of like my father. We used to laugh and talk about why didn't they get married? They should have been married to each other, So when I sit down and I told him, I said, well, I really am wanting to go to college. I really don't think I'm ready to get married, and that's not something I want to do. But I don't have any problems with paying child support and doing what I need to do. That's what I meant. Once I got away, now I'm in the military dealing with, I don't want to be a cook. That whole thing, so I wasn't thinking about him. I was thinking about how not to go to the stockade,
Well, here's another part that I remember you told me. You said she called you and said, "If you don't..."
Oh yeah. I forgot that.
Tell that part. Tell that part.
Yeah. When I went over that evening, it was like about 6 o'clock, and I went over. By 8 o'clock, I get a call from her house, and she's soused And she's on the phone. She said, "You done knocked up my baby girl. I'm gonna have you put under the jail." So that just made me go quicker. So I told my mom the next day. I said, "Mom, I'm gonna be leaving in 2 weeks." She said, "I thought you wasn't joining the service." I said, "I got to go."
Service in jail, right?
That's right.
You know, that happened to so many.
Yeah,
young
but back
people.
then they called them shotgun weddings.
Yes, yes.
That the father would say, if you don't marry her,
Right.
I'm gonna take this shotgun to you. You see what I'm saying? So I was just coming out of it. I was at the tail end of that. So that was what I thought. So I said, "Oh no, I can't go for that."
Yeah.
Her father was a professional boxer.
But when you told that was, he said, okay, callers or the Air Force. He said, Air Force, here I go, right? But, you know, I think that's really important. And I don't know if there's a message that we can send out to people when that happens to those children at 16, 17, and 18. It's really critical how the parents deal with it.
That's right.
And what they say and what they do.
Right.
And they need to be there to help them and not to punish them. They're already punished.
They punish right
Yeah,
there.
right there.
You know,
That's
the hardest job you gonna ever have is raising a kid.
Yeah.
That's not an easy job. You know, and when you're an absentee father, it's even more challenging. You know, and for me, I tell people all the time, the reason that I know that I'm a success is out of my children, they're all in my camp now. Now, it ain't all the way it should be, but ain't nobody's.
Right.
The people that was there all the children's lives, they don't have all the kind of relationship that they would like with their kids. So I feel pretty good.
You know, I just think that I was going to say something about the father son piece. It's kind of slipped. You know, at this age, things will come in and it'll like leave.
Yeah, you ain't got to tell me.
Go back out. But one of the things I think that is so critical with the father and son piece is that we've got to talk about it. We have to share it.
Yeah.
And I think as fathers, we need to share those kind of feelings with our sons. So, and not lie to them.
Right.
Tell them what really happened and how it happened.
Right.
And then their sons need to be able to share with their fathers what they're feeling. And that's the part that's hard. Because the son may say something to the dad, and the dad may want to punch him out for it. And what the dad needs to do is just shut the hell up.
Right.
And take it and absorb it and understand it.
Right.
Now, there's a line, a respect line that you draw. But that's a piece. And I think you and Darren brought that out over and over and over again. After you did that exceptionally well. No matter what he said to you, he just took it, man. He just like bam, right in the face, and said, "Oh, I want to smack him," right? But he took it.
Yeah.
And I even asked you, how did you do that? How were you able to take that hit and absorb it and be respectful and come back with an appropriate response, or I'm sorry.
Darren told me he came by the house one day after we had been going back and forth with the book, and you and I and Ella, we all had been doing it. He came over to the house one day. He said, "Dad," he said, "I know the answers already to these questions, but you need to answer them for me." And he had a whole list. And I understood what he meant. I understood specifically, I understood clearly what he meant. He said, "No, brother, you can tell me why," because all those questions was in his mind.
So intellectually he knew.
Yeah.
But he had to hear it from you.
Yeah. Intellectually he knew, but he had to hear it from me, because that's a lot of pain and a lot of hurt and, you know, a lot of disappointment. And he had to get that out. And that helped him immensely to get that out, you know, to be able to do that. Now, like my second son, the reason that our relationship is still estranged, he hasn't done that.
Yeah, it's tough.
And I said, "Hey, you know," Darren has told him, you know, he said, "Hey, man, need to get something cleaned up. You need to go do it." And he still hasn't got the courage. He still wants to come tough.
Yeah.
You know, he still wants to, "You owe me child support. You know, I'm going to kick you behind." You know, that he's still into that mindset. But what it is the pain that he had, because he was an only child.
And didn't have the kind of mom.
And didn't have the kind of mom that same kind of mom that the other one had. His mom was still hanging in the streets, leaving him at home by himself, that kind of stuff. You know, and so he's angry. You know, he's angry with her and he's angry with me.
Even when we did the radio piece, we talked about it. You could see the difference between the two of them, because they were both there together, and one responded to a question one way and the other responded to the question the other way. And you just want to reach out to him, because you do know, he needs that hug. And I don't know if you've ever been able to do the hug with him.
No.
See? So,
Yeah,
and it's what he needs. It's what he
yeah,
really needs.
yeah. Like right now, what we're going through is he's wants to deal with me through the text, and I told him that I want face to face.
Hmm.
You know, text can be misinterpreted.
Right. Yeah.
You know, you should use a word that I don't know about. You come up with them slang words that they come up with. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I know that's right.
And I told him, anytime you want to come over, we can sit right out here in the backyard and cut it up because I got to take it. I did it, and it'll help him heal, and it certainly will help me heal. Again, digress. My father, I shared, was an abusive alcoholic, and my only defense as a little kid was to say that I hated him. Okay, but as I got older and I was still saying it, now it's in my subconscious. Now I got the bitterness with it. I hate him. Okay, and so I went around publicly telling people I hate my father. And one day a sister looked at me and she looked at me and she said, Richard, she said, you sound like an idiot. You hate your father? That's you, you know. And
Woo.
that's when I got it. That's when I got it. I was busy trying to get with her.
Right.
And she said
She
me
laid
straight
it on
right
you,
there.
right?
She said,
She got with you.
yeah, you know, I said, whoa. And that's when I stopped doing it. Now, I still didn't talk to him a whole lot, but uh, when I really wanted to talk to my father and ask for forgiveness, I was probably about 35, and I called him, and he was losing his hearing.
Wow.
So he couldn't hear well.
Wow.
And so I said, I'll just wait till I go home, you know, and I'll talk to him. In the meantime, he died.
Wow. That's
So I never got to ask for forgiveness and never got to tell him I loved him and never got to do that. So I took that very hard. That kind of rattled me a lot. I went to counseling, and I usually ain't gonna be paying no counselor. And I was paying like $80 an hour back in the day, you know, and I went to this counselor, and they told me, they said, Richard, your father's no longer here. You're not going to be able to go public and do that, but you got to do something to release that. And he said, what I would suggest you do, you go home, find a quiet space, sit a chair on the other side of the room, sit your father in that chair and say everything that you ever thought you ever wanted to say to him. And I did that. And about a couple of weeks later, I had a dream, and it was about my father. And my father and I were standing this close, face to face. And I was angry. I was violent. I was angry. I wanted to kill him. I wanted, you know, the anger. I couldn't decide whether I wanted to hug him or hit him. I was like that. I just kept looking at him. And then I finally hugged him. And when I woke up, I was cool.
wow. That's powerful.
I was cool when I woke up because I let all of that go because what it is the pain.
Yeah.
It's the hurt. You know, how you not gonna have, you know, you got two parents, how you not gonna get the love from both of them?
Right.
That ain't gonna work well for you. You know, and so that was part of what kept me being persistent and it gave me the strength and the courage to deal with whatever it is they say.
You got to acknowledge.
You know,
you got to get
you got to acknowledge that you like I said, you can't escape. You walked away. The minute you say, "Well, buh," you make an excuse. You still did it.
There's almost nothing you can say.
See, there's nothing you can
And be
say.
ready for it.
Right. So you got to be ready for it. And you know they're going to hurt. They're going to try to hurt you. They're going to say things to try to hurt you or whatever. You can't get upset. That's them trying to release that. You know, so you got to say and be able to come back and say something comforting. You know, say, hey, I'm, you know, like one of the things that I told all of my children, I asked them, I said, do you believe in a higher power, whatever it is for you, whoever it is for you? Do you believe that higher power is omniscient, omnipresent, and omnipotent? And if you do, that means they can see all, they know all, and they can do all. Okay? So what if that entity decided that Richard is not ready to be dealing with children at that age because he may bring that same thing his father had. And so you deal with it in later life. I said, why couldn't it be that? A couple of them bought it. A couple of them didn't.
That's powerful, though.
See what I'm saying? I probably would have beat them. That's what I got.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying? And so how would that have worked?
Yeah.
That wouldn't have worked well. So I told him, I said, you know, let's start from here. And my hope was when I came back to deal with my children, my hope is that we could just be friends. I ain't saying that I'm gonna come in and we're gonna be hunky dory, buddy, buddy, all rocking and roll. We need to just be friends. Acknowledge that I'm your father. You acknowledge that I'm acknowledging you, my son. You know, we acknowledge that. That means we can speak to each other. We can talk to each other civilly. You know, and that to me is what you got to work for. Now, here's the flip side. That one of the things we talked about, Jim. I don't know if you remember when I talked about fathers have to take the responsibility to reach out to their children. They can't put it on the kid.
Right.
You know, or my son won't do nothing or whatever. You got to humble yourself.
Right.
You got to humble yourself and admit your mistake. You know,
Take the rejection.
and take the rejection. Because when you humble yourself, admit the mistake, and they give you the rejection, the next step is you open the door. The door is cracked because the kid is going to think about it now. I let him have it.
I told him.
Yeah, I got that off me, and he told me, and I heard what he was saying. So now you got some wiggle room in there now to begin to do some things. And one of the things that Darren and I didn't do that I really wish we had done more of is you got to try to spend quality time with each other to learn about each other because you're learning about yourself. Like we spent more time together with you guys when we did that was see that helped a lot. See what I'm saying? But if we had spent at least once a week, you know, doing something, you know, that would have helped. Yes. So that's one of the things that I tell guys when you're trying to get back with your kid, you got to be persistent and consistent. And so you set a time, say we're gonna meet once a month and go to lunch, or we're gonna meet every 2 weeks and go. You got to do that. You can't come up with I forgot, I didn't. You know, you can't. Now all you're doing is opening up them old wounds. You're unreliable. You don't keep your word. You know, that kind of stuff. You know, so those were the things that that helped me to do what I had to do. One of the things that Darren said that was the toughest thing for him, but all the people ask him when we go speak. Said, how did you forgive him? They asked my son, how did you forgive him? He said that was tough when they asked him that question, you know. He said he just learned how to do that by being around me, seeing the kind of person I was, you know, because you make up an image of what you know, like my dad was the big bad wolf, you know, I didn't see him no other way until later in life I started looking at him as a man and understanding what he had gone through. His father was a sharecropper, and his father beat him and made him work every day. And that's all he knew. So he just passed that on to us. You know, so that's the thing when you don't have that continuity. That's the thing that when they brought a lot of us over here from Africa and split up our families, that was what they did. That's part of the reason they did that.
They didn't want the man.
See? They didn't want the man there. Then when they came out with the welfare and you couldn't be in the house if you was a man, that was further that. They know that. They know. If you can, so what they did was they marginalized us to where our women could make more money than us.
Don't need us.
Or much money.
That's right.
So now they can say, I don't need a man. And that's a trick. Because they're always underpaying the woman. Always.
Right.
And that was why affirmative action didn't work, was because the Jewish people recognized that they weren't included in those categories. And so they paid Alan Bakke, who was 38 years old, to file a lawsuit against UC Berkeley for denying him medical school when he was too old to go. But they paid for it to test the waters. And that's when they start chipping away at affirmative action. And that's when they came up with the feminist movement, when they came up saying women are a minority. And see, again, I was smart enough to know that was a trick too. Women are not a minority, they're 51% of the population. Right. See what I'm saying? So what they did was they tricked them in and gave them paper enough jobs. But what happened with us was when they opened the door for black males, they only did that for entry level. And they said they ain't gonna work, they're gonna wash out or whatever. And the brothers got in there, they started kicking the doors down. They started asking for more money. And they saw them learning how to, they said, oh. So that's when they start filing them lawsuits and saying it was inequitable.
Well, that was interesting because I was a part of the first group of African American males, African American females, and white females to be hired by Xerox.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
Xerox
yeah.
believed that we didn't know whether we were capable to produce as well as white males.
Right.
But I don't want. I'm gonna go back. I got one more question. I remember that thing and I forgot. But one other question. One of the things that you talked about, the fathers need to reach out to the son. So the two questions I want to ask you about that. Then I want to go back to the father and son banquet that I went to. That was the first one I experienced. But so what if the dad doesn't reach out to the son? What does the son do? Can he just say, "Well, my dad didn't reach out to me. To hell with him"?
No, what I tell the young guys, I said, you're not reaching out to your father for him. You're doing it for yourself.
Woo.
You're getting it off of you. Put it on him. Let him know that it's on him because you said you're not big enough to come and talk to me. I'm big enough to come and talk to you. And if you don't want to deal with that, I'm done.
Right.
I said, once you go in there and you talk to him and say what you need to say, if he don't respond or whatever, you go. Now, I got a mentee that father rejects. Still, when I went down to Pickway dealing with those guys in prison, they had guys that did that. I told them. I said, you got to do it. You got to reach out to them. I said, if you can't talk to them, if you're not confident enough to stand there and talk to them, write them a long letter and tell them everything. And once you relieve yourself from that, you're free. But if you keep harboring yours and he's harboring his, that's, nothing's happening.
Okay, the last question I think that I wanted to throw out was Richard has done what 15 to 16 prior to this last one. 15 father and son, 15 father and son backwards every year, and he started doing it after the Million Man March, which was with very few people. Because after Million Man March, they said go back and do something. Most people did nothing, and so I need to applaud you for doing that, and not only doing it, but staying consistent. And not only that, he has videos and he has pictures and photographs of it, so it is documented. So no one can say that you didn't do that. I experienced the first father and son banquet myself, and I took my son, my grandson, and great grandson. And it was really a powerful, powerful experience. It was a great experience for my great grandson to see the engagement and the interaction of fathers and sons coming in. And it was a great experience for my grandson to see that also, even though we've always been connected. But I saw fathers come in there with their sons. Some of them had on suits, some of them had on same color t-shirts. They were talking, they were engaging, they were I mean, it was beautiful. I didn't see any conflict. I didn't see any pushback. All I saw was just young adult men and young men and even little teeny weeny ones just coming together and interacting. It was powerful.
Yeah.
So I would say, Rich, next year, it would be great to double or triple that number of people.
Oh, yeah.
And so if we start now by telling people, inviting them to become a part of the father and son, they send to your email address and start getting the tickets now, start getting that stuff rolling, and I don't know, I know you're doing some planning about it, but we need to do that. Columbus needs to start it, and it needs to go throughout Ohio, the country, really. Yeah.
Again, that's what my whole thing was to, galvanize people around that to get to where we have to turn people away.
Right.
It should be where you turn people away. Because what Jim is saying, I go even deeper. When we had it at the King Center, we used to have it at the first 10 years we did it at the King Center. And what I wanted to do was get one of them big strobe lights and have it out there on that parking lot with a sign up to saying the Father and Son celebration.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, I saw there was a brother with his two sons. I mean, I got a picture of this cat. I mean, I loved that picture. I was standing at the door watching him. He was coming out of the parking lot. He was about Jim's height. Had one of them big sky hats on.
Yeah.
Had on a double-breasted long coat back when they had them long coats.
Right.
And his little boys, one was about this tall and one was about this tall, and they had on the same suits with the same hat. And them little boys was coming across that street, buddy.
That's
Yeah, I'm with my dad, baby.
Yeah.
And that's what people don't understand.
I see you.
I remember the one thing that I remember about my father that really made me give him some play was when he first took me to the barbershop. that was the greatest thrill for me in the world, to go to the barbershop with my father in there with the men. Nothing but men. I'm sitting there, I'm in there with the men, brother. You know, I love that, man. You know, I didn't cry when I got my hair cut. You know, when I was little, I didn't cry because I wanted to be there. I wanted to be a man. You know, and again, that's what I tell a lot of brothers. When you have a male child, he comes here wanting to be a man. He already knows that instinctively, intuitively, he's going to be a man. So that's why he's always studying men.
Yep.
And if you got the wrong model there,
Yeah.
he's studying the wrong.
Commercials where the dad does something and the little boy looking at me did the same thing. Yeah.
You know, you want to do everything you see the father does, you know. Like my father used to get the best pieces of chicken as far as I was concerned. I used to like, Mom, why can't I get you a little boy, you know?
Well, you talk about also your dad was clean, man. You talk about watch it. Tell me that.
Yeah, my father was a fantastic dresser. He was 6'1". He was handsome, had a nice voice, but he dressed sharp and always wore hats. And when I was a kid, I always thought I had a big head, so I didn't wear hats, you know, because people used to laugh at my head. They said, big head Lundy, you know. So I was embarrassed to wear hats, but I love them. And my dad always wore them, and he was always dressed. When he'd come home from work, he'd take a bath in a bathtub, and he'd get up and he would fix him something to eat before dinner. And he would put his clothes on. I'd watch him dress.
You see, he shaved.
I'd watch him shave, and he had a straight razor, and he would be going like this, and I would be standing there like, wow, how does he not cut his throat? You know, and then he would shape his eyes. He'd shape his sideburns. He had long sideburns, and he would shape them. Then he'd put his lotion on. I said, I want to do that. Yeah,
you don't see that. You don't see that.
Yeah, you know, so you know, you'd see it. Then he'd get up. He'd look in he'd had a mirror like that. He'd look in the long-term mirror, and he'd say, I'm gone. You know, and I said, I can't wait to be a man.
That's powerful. Just as a close.
Yeah.
Bam. Woo.
Yeah.
Well, that's why Father Son is so powerful. And please get the book, you folks. Get the book and read it for yourself.
I was starting to bring you one. If I'd have known it was you, I'd have bought it. But I said, I bring this guy one and he don't read it, I'll be pissed. Because I gave one to a guy that I worked with when I was out at the school out there, and he never read it, you know. And I said, man, you ain't ever read it. I said, I already told you, you know. So I'll get you a book. Yeah.
Also, you done?
Do you have any questions, sir?
What do you mean when I did it? What did you do?
What do you mean? About the book? The only thing I could think of is I reconnected with my children. You know, that was something that I always wanted to do.
You took the initiative?
Yeah. You know, it wasn't easy. I knew it wasn't going to be. Like I said, looking at all I saw how my nephews rejected them guys. They didn't like, you know, but my sisters would bring a guy by, the same guy that they was dealing with or whatever. I saw how they dealt with that. So my thing was, whatever I got to do, I got to reconnect with them, and it's up to me. It ain't up to them. It's up to me. Whatever I have to do, I have to do it, or I would see myself as a failure.
Wow, that's powerful. To say to yourself, if you're not connected with your son, you know, and we're not leaving daughters out, but right now we're not talking about girls because the same thing is applicable there. But right now, Richard did his with him and his son, and probably we need to find a mom that has done the same thing. But you know, the one thing that he had to do, and he said to himself, I got to do this. And what we're saying to other fathers and we're saying to other sons, you got to do it. You got to do it for you.
Right.
And when you do it for yourself, you do it for your family. When you do it for your family, we do it for the community. When we do it for the community, we do it for everyone. That's where we need to be as a Black.
The last thing I want to say is when I talk to brothers and I tell them how important it is for them to reclaim their children, I tell them that they need to reclaim. We have to reclaim our children, okay? And what I share with them is that little kid that you see, the little Black kid that you see going to a school or going to a playground and spray bullets and kill somebody, that's somebody's son.
Yes.
And that father needs to be responsible for
That's
that.
right. That's right. black or white.
black or white.
Yeah.
That father needs to be responsible for that. Go find your son. Go talk to your
Talk to
son,
him,
because
right.
you're the only one that he's going to listen to.
That's right.
He's not going to listen to nobody. He ain't going to want to listen to you, but he'll give you a little holler,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So I tell brothers in the father and son celebration, I tell them, I say, brothers, we got to reclaim our children.
Well, that's a powerful model. Reclaim our children.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. If we could
Yeah.
do that as black men,
Yeah.
ooh, reclaim our children.
Yeah.
That should be a mantra.
And see, the father and son celebration, what I try to share with brothers is why I say that we need to do that collectively, is to prove to our women that we can do
Ooh.
one thing and well. And look at what the kids are going to think. They're proud. Those brothers did, as opposed to how many times do we hear brothers at a meeting talking about what they're going to do and never get it done? So that's a bad track record for. That's why that's one of the reasons they don't listen to us. They're looking at you like, well, what did you do? See what I'm saying? So, it's a win-win. It should be a community effort. It's a win-win. It makes the community feel good. Even white people are going to feel good.
Right.
They're going to be some that ain't going to like it, but we ain't dealing with them.
But they need to do it for their own.
Yeah,
Because,
right.
if a white person's looking at this and talking down, they need to turn around and look at their cousins, their mothers, their brothers.
Right.
Because they're going through the same damn stuff.
Right.
It's happening. It's universal.
Right.
It's universal.
Right. Right now, they crying about white males not in college now.
Yeah. And they had all the opportunities.
They had all the opportunities.
And that's another session.
Yeah, but I'm glad that I think that what my thing was wanting to do this was to get the whole story out.
Yeah.
And people could piece it together. I mean, you can edit it out and whatever, but they get the bigger picture. This is a movement. This isn't just a. This is a movement. We did father and son softball game at the Juneteenth over in Franklin Park. I did a financial investment seminar for fathers and sons. We went to the Black Rodeo, fathers and sons. I was trying to put together a trip to the Cincinnati African American Museum for fathers and sons. Look at that bus ride down there. Look at the energy.
Yeah, all the talking, the sharing.
See what I'm saying? It's a gold mine. I'm telling you. It's a gold mine for a whole lot of reasons in terms of helping to save our community. I think it's a good thing, and I think that it's a good place. If you say, what other city do you know in the United States of America that does a father and son celebration? We're the number one.
That's right.
So we should be proud of that.
That's right.
And Columbus is one of the fastest growing cities in the United States.
right.
So look what that says about us.
That's exactly it.
Look what that said. Them black men did that. Wow, in 15, 16 years they've been doing that. Woo.
And the mayor says he wants Columbus to be the number one city, the place where you want to go to raise your families,
Right.
to start a critical part of that to help him fulfill his vision would be, and also look at the power of black fathers and sons
Right.
in Columbus,
Right.
Ohio.
Now we can talk to brothers and collectively about things that we can do. We can adopt schools. We can go to school board meetings. We can go to parent-teachers conferences now. Like I did some consulting work with Head Start for about 3 years. And that was when they were telling school, Clinton was in office, and that was when he was telling the schools that they had the Head Starts, that they had to make the schools more user friendly for males, because fathers didn't like to go into them schools, and the teachers didn't like them to come into schools, and that whole. So I had to go in there and do a whole study to help them do that, make it user friendly. And so I got to look at the little young kids. The little young kids, everybody knows this.
They know, yeah.
They know this. You let a man go into a classroom with small children, they're immediately going to be quiet. Immediately. I don't care what they look like. They're going to immediately. Now, if don't come out of your mouth, you'll lose them. See what I'm saying? So when you go into the class, one of the things that I used to tell my parents to do when I was doing those single women workshops, I used to tell those women, I said, you guys should go to school board meeting, because they're videotaped. You should go to the videotape. I said, you get 3 minutes or 2 minutes or whatever it is, have your statement written, and go up there. You need about 3 or 4 of y'all to go up there and read this statement and say, these are 2 our demands, non-negotiable. more African American males in K-6 and more African history in the classrooms. African history is world history. How do you have world history and not have African history in it?
You don't.
I said, just go on record. Now they videotape it. They're going to blow you off. We don't have the money, whatever. Go back to next year. The same thing. They're not going to do it again. The third year, you say, we're going to file a class action lawsuit because you know what you're doing to our children. You got them.
That's powerful.
You got them.
You know, and I want to do a shout out for Franklin County Children's Services to me, which I truly respect them. They're saying the way that you really take and protect children is by strengthening families. And so what they're doing now, they are reaching out towards fathers when there's any problems with children. They want to make sure that fathers are there, and if the father wants to, under the certain right circumstances, they want to be able to put the child with the dad because they realize the value. Now, of course, everyone has to qualify. Everyone has to be able to do that. But in the past, that hasn't been happening. So they are recognizing the value of the father being a part of the family with both the son and the daughter. So they're doing a really great job. I always have to do a shout out for them because they're doing an outstanding job working with our kids.
Yes, one of the things that Children's Services has is they've been able to cut into the Simba program.
Yes, Simba. Yeah,
And
right.
so they have access to a lot of youth.
Yeah.
And I'm talking to one of the guys down there, and he's trying to figure out how he can get me in there. And just sitting there listening to Jim talk, I see how he can get me in there.
Yeah. And we can do that. So
Because again, just like you were talking about over at Barb's, uh, you know, train the trainer.
right.
See what I'm saying? Because I got all the stuff,
He does.
I got all
He's
the
a
stuff.
writer. That boy got so much stuff, man. It's unbelievable. He got the document after articles. I said, man, you got all this stuff and all that. He has it. He has a date and the time. So, it's like, damn. And the paper is old. The paper that started turning yellow. You know what I'm saying? So he's got it. I said, man, you are a writer and you need to get this stuff out, put a name on it or a title on it or something, and make some copies and get it out because it's good stuff, though. Of course,
I got articles that I wrote in 1974 about family values.
74, and you know nothing about that, young man. Your dad may not know nothing much about that.
So
Yeah.
I love to write. My greatest thing that I've written, Jim hasn't seen it. I got 2 folders about that thick of articles about Trump during his first administration.
Wow.
I reacted to everything controversial that he came up with from an Afrocentric perspective. And I was warning the people that he was going to get back in office.
Politics. Yeah, I don't know if he would have dealt with the
No,
politics.
I ain't talking about him using it.
I
I'm
know,
just
but I'm
giving
just
him the
saying,
information. Yeah,
Yes,
I'm just giving him
yeah,
the
you can cut
information.
that out.
No. We don't. No, I don't want to get into no politics. So that's not where I am.
Yeah.
It ain't about that.
Yeah. That did go. All right, man.
All right.
That's about it, brother. Unless you have something else to carry it to the next level. My thing is, why not Columbus? I think the mayor, as he has said, not only did he say it in the state of the city this time, but he said it before. He said one of his dreams, one of his targets is to make Columbus, Ohio, if not the number one of the top 5 cities in the nation that people would want to raise their children, their families, and start their businesses. And if we could say, maybe next time talk to him and say, also, one of the things that's powerful in Columbus is that not only black families and maybe white families too, the fathers and sons have built this powerful, powerful alliance with each other. And they're working to continue to develop that because if you talk about family and family health, I mean, if fathers and if sons are together, that helps to shore up the family. So I think that's one of the reasons why Columbus would be it's a capital,
Right.
And so why not?
Right.
Why not
Right.
here?
I think it
It's
fits.
going to happen anywhere,
Right.
and there isn't any other city in the nation that has had 16. 16, that's right, it's fast. 16 father and sons conferences consistently since the Million Man March. None of them. I know that for a fact. None of them. So that would be the perfect reason why I should start here.
Yes, I can. I've always wanted to pull Ginther's coattail on the side when I was out somewhere publicly to remind him. When I came back in 1991, I worked on Ray Miller's campaign, and Ginther was there as a little kid. His mother was a big time,
Yeah.
and I told people, I said, he's getting groomed. His mother's getting him groomed. So now he's the mayor.
He's the mayor. Yeah. Wow, that's powerful. Hey, Ginther, check this out, brother.
That's right, brother.
I know you, man.
All right, Mr. Smith.